Nice. And if you could just make me host again.
Hello.
Hey,
Can you
Will,
guys
how
hear
are you?
me?
We can, yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Are we started yet?
Okay, we are starting right now. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and start the webinar. All right, let me pull up the minutes. All right. Right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Pursuant to Senate Bill number 2475, which was signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, this meeting in the Southborough Municipal Technology Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No,
Yeah.
Which is the parsonage?
no
for the
in-person
house, for the church. Do you know?
I do not.
Let me mute you, Will, here. Okay, no in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means like Zoom and YouTube. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we'll post on the Southborough's website an audio and/or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So, calling the meeting to order at 7:10 p.m. Let's review. Do we have minutes, Larry? You're muted.
Yes, I sent email out either yesterday or Sunday that had 3 documents. It had the minutes, it had the questionnaire, and it had the rules of procedure.
Awesome. Thank you.
I got that. Yeah.
Now, this is the minutes, not of the last meeting, but I still haven't caught up, but the one before that. So I'm still one behind.
Yep. Okay, let me open those up and screen share. Okay, this is from May 20th. And this is May 20th was our Board of Health discussion, Mary Lou and Heather. Also first time Brian Donovan as the ex officio member representing the library joined. And by the way, for the official notes for this meeting, I was informed by Jim Haggerty that we don't yet have confirmation of Will's or Jeff's reappointment by the school committee. So at least for this meeting, until we have the reappointment, Mr. Warren will be joining us as a member of the public, as opposed to a committee member. But we still have a quorum with Angela and Larry and myself. So I know Mr. Hegarty has approached the superintendent and head of the school committee to ask about the reappointments.
Matt, I thought
Hmm.
that Jason was confirmed in his role. Is he not joining this evening?
Jason unfortunately has conflict
Oh,
due to I think it's the Board of Selectmen meeting.
okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, he let me know unfortunately last week that he wouldn't be able to join. So I decided we would still proceed with this meeting tonight, even if it's a light one over the summer.
Matt, couple things. One, I did get an email, I think yesterday from Jim to the effect that, or I'm sorry, from Amy Berry, the person who actually runs the town, to the effect that, I have to admit that I got some paperwork related to my appointment. So I should be getting pretty close on that. I'm making it all official. And when you have a chance, I have to leave at 7:20. I would like to make just a couple comments about the rules of procedure.
Sure. Yeah, let's quickly finish these review of these minutes. A variety of discussion points about state of emergency, etc. Any motions to amend these minutes? Okay, any motions to accept these minutes as is?
Yes.
Okay, so Angela moves to accept. I second that. Do roll call vote. Larry? The motion is to accept the minutes as is without amendment for May 20th, 2021.
I,
Great. Likewise, I and Angela.
Aye.
Great, thanks. All right, stop share. Let's quickly shift over to, I know you need to leave, Will, but would love your comment on the rules procedure. We pull those up.
Okay, yeah, I went through them a couple times, and generally they seem very good. I would say that it seemed like the relationship of the Municipal Technology Committee with respect to other departments is kind of vague, especially when we're committing ourselves to keeping a list of programs and projects that are going on. So I'm just wondering if there's any way that we could perhaps make that a little bit more specific as to how we would interact with other departments, and to what extent they should be telling us what they're doing, or that we should be visiting them on some regular basis. I don't know. This is similar to a problem that the Americans with Disabilities Committee also has, which is that it's going to be on the hook to try and make certain that the town is moving forward on different areas of accessibility that fall across many different departments, and also making certain that departments are not creating new accessibility issues. So that would be my comment on that. And then the other comment I would make is that not so much on the rules, but just to let you know that 2 weeks ago today, I had an excellent meeting with Pam LeFrancois over at the Senior Center. And she gave me 2 hours of her time, which was very nice. And I'm going to be writing that up. I had intended to write it up, but I had some issues in my family that I had to take care of last week. But she has a variety of areas where we can, where technology really can help her. And I think that, one thing about all of the areas that she mentioned, like, developing a better phone tree for incoming calls so that, people can get to the right voicemail box, and then those voicemail boxes can be picked up by the right people. She's also looking at, how does she do hybrid meetings, for presentations and such. And, so it sounds like there's a number of areas where additional technology can help. But what I would say is that it seems that in these areas, we on the committee or someone on the committee, or maybe me on the committee, is going to have to go in and develop, sort of clarify and develop good requirements before we, talk to Jason or anybody about actually implementing, just to make certain that we've actually sort of have thought it through pretty carefully. And that takes time, right? That takes meetings. It takes, working out some documents. And then once we've gotten that ground cleared, then I think, then the implementation teams can come in.
Yeah,
Remember, Pam was Council on Aging?
yeah.
Yes, and seniors, and she's the head of the senior center.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's going to take effort, and that's truly our value add of helping sort of lay the groundwork, the path towards the actual implementation, and provide implementation guidance as much as possible. Before you leave, though, going back to the comments on rules and procedure, we have certainly full ability to decide how we interact, how we as a committee interact with other committees and other groups in town, citizens, the town itself. The rules and procedure are purely for our own governance. We can't use them, of course, to dictate what other people do outside the committee. It's purely for ourselves. It doesn't in any way amend the bylaw for what basically the law of what the town is required to do. All it purely is how we conduct our own business. And so I wouldn't want to necessarily bake specific programs into that. I think we're doing an excellent job as is, iterating on improving the programs and how we interact with other groups. But we can think about how next iteration version 3.0 of the rules and procedure, but it's not necessarily a great vehicle for interacting with others. I think by and large, I haven't seen any sort of pushback from other committees and other groups now that they've been welcoming arms. We've seen welcoming arms for our outreach, for our the process, our interviews, and so forth. So it's been good. Thank you, Will, also for all your work with the Senior Center with Pam. Like you said, it's going to take
really
time, but it's a risk.
It really is just amazing the breadth and scope of what they do over there, I have to say. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to jump off, but you guys had a meeting without me, right?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Will.
So just in terms of preface, the only changes that I've made to the rules of procedure are integrating the change that we voted on a few meetings ago for how we deal with contractors, and then a lot of structural, grammatical, and formatting work. I tend to be somewhat obsessive about those things, and I spend a fair amount of. Well, my day job is being an editor for standards, so it's what I do. I just sort of cleaned up the formatting, which is why I sent the red line version along with the PDF version. And I did notice one problem as Matt was just scrolling through that there's actually a footer in the text, I believe, that I didn't notice when I was working on it, because that doesn't always show up when you're in Word. And I never updated the date in the footer, so I have to fix that.
Oh, good point. I see 10th of April, 2018, page 1 of 8.
I didn't see any changes. I mean, nothing jumped out at me as, any kind of issue. So I think they look good from my vantage point.
Yeah, likewise. But I'd say let's come back to this after our discussion. We'll be cognizant of our guest Marianne's time. She's the volunteer, as you recall. She's joining us tonight for the discussion on the citizen survey analysis, result analysis. So I'm going to promote her to a panelist for this discussion. And just for everybody's awareness, at our last meeting, we voted to for me to reach out and work out the volunteer consultant agreement with Marianne. So we've done that, and Marianne has executed that. And we greatly appreciate Marianne, your service and your willingness to join us tonight to discuss at a high level set of the results. And also for everybody's awareness, we're not going to discuss any individual survey response for basically privacy reasons, but we do want to discuss like what are our objectives, what are we trying to accomplish for the results, and both to what can we glean from the existing survey for actionable results for ourselves, for other town departments, committees, and then of course we want to also learn like what are the mistakes we made. Clearly we made lots of mistakes. This is our first attempt, and we just want to test and learn so that the 2022 version of the survey can be improved, and we'll, through a process of continual improvement. So welcome, Marianne. All right. Basically to start off, basically what are the key objectives? And Marianne, I sent you, and we had previously discussed this a few times within the MTC, that we don't have necessarily specific objectives other than becoming yet defined. We would like to have to define them, but we want to become a data-driven city. And we want to help encourage and facilitate various town departments and committees making more decisions using data, and as well as, one of the key pieces of data is citizen input. So identify how can the town improve through citizen input and collecting their ideas, as opposed to, just basically the more input we have from citizens about their stances towards different projects, different how town departments are working, and how satisfied they are. That sort of serves as a foundation for improvement. So as the town departments attempt to improve, how can they improve? What are the areas, deficiencies that they can work on? So a lot of this, as I mentioned, had been based on uses a model survey instrument, a survey put out by the Mayor's Office of Kansas City, Missouri, and they spend a lot of money. They have a dedicated office within the mayor, staffed with dedicated team of individuals and an external consultancy. So I'm sure they spend $1 million. Of course, they have big city. They can do this.
Right.
But they spent quite a number of years designing this and designing the survey instrument, as well as the resulting reports. So I had asked them a couple of years ago when I first started this, hey, can we just use your survey? And they said, absolutely, it's in public domain. So I took their survey, basically I went through the survey, every question in their survey that seemed to have relevance for Southborough, a lot of them didn't, but many did, I copied, and then I went out to the respective departments and a couple committees, but mostly departments, and said, hey, what do you think about these questions? Do you have additional ones? Do you want to revise these, etc.? That's the genesis for the survey. So in terms of results, I thought we could consider using the survey reports findings, the type of findings, the categories of findings that they had come up with. Foundationally, you start with, well, clearly the survey is divided into different sections, and like police department, fire department. What is the general town sentiment, respondent sentiment towards each of the departments and how well they're doing in different areas? So,
I mean, I think for me, there's a couple of things that would be extremely helpful. I don't know, Marianne, if you've seen the draft IT strategy that we put together for the town. If you don't have that, we could email a copy over to you. But in that strategy, we outline, core theme areas that we want to focus on, or we feel that are going to be important for the town to focus on going forward. I think one thing that would be really helpful is to look at the results of the survey and kind of almost stress test the priorities that we have in the strategy. Is the strategy being supported by the data that we're seeing come through the citizen survey? So are those things in alignment? So that would be one piece I think would be interesting. The other piece I think is getting a very clear view of where there's citizen demand for certain services or priorities as an input into the budget cycle for next year or even this year, to help us figure out where should we be investing in projects, how do we prioritize those projects to make sure we're taking on the most urgent stuff first. And then, is there any demographic correlation to the demand? Do people in one part of town need a specific service more than people in another part of town? And just kind of, I guess, any insights that we could get, whether that's by different persona based, people who filled out the survey that are under 50 have these priorities. People that filled out the survey that are over 50 have these priorities. I think any kind of demographic cuts of the data that we could do would be interesting as well.
That sounds great. Thanks, Angela, for outlining that clearly with those 3 points. I think that there's a lot of information in this data. I just took a cursory glance at it. There's a lot of different open responses, free responses. So we'll take a crack at that. I think one thing to ask is, so you'll have, if you don't mind, I have not seen that IT strategy, so that'd be great if we can send that over. And in terms of prioritizing different citizens' demand for projects or priorities to inform the budget cycle, when does that, I'm very new to this, so I hope you don't mind me asking when that starts.
Oh, not at all. I think we just did it. So it was just completed at town meeting, and then
budget cycle is like a year. The moment the budget closes at town meeting and the citizens approve it, the next year's starts. You start planning,
Gotcha.
etc. The real momentum is in the fall. That's when I think. I know Jim's online. He probably knows better than all of us here, but I think it's something around the finance folks from the town ask each of the departments to put forth drafts of their budget by October-ish, November-ish.
Okay.
And they really like to have it finalized by, finalized is a relative term, by December, so that in January and February, which are the last couple of months before town meeting, they're just minor, everybody's on the same page, and that we really have a good, because inevitably all of the initial budget asks in the fall are large, and inevitably that would translate to 20% tax, 30% tax increase for all citizens, and of course we say no, that can't work. Go back, sharpen your pencils, and everybody's asked to basically refine their asks down to something reasonable, and so it's basically a negotiation process back and forth that starts. So I 100%, 200% agree with Angela here. The more we can feed valuable data into even before those initial asks, because the initial asks are almost like a stake in the ground, like here's what I want and I need it, and the town's going to fall apart if we don't have it. Well, it'd be nice to actually provide those people real data to show, what will fall apart, what the citizens will be happy with and won't be happy providing this data. And so I think, I think we have a couple of months basically to be able to provide that data back to departments. And one of the, I can't say how much data we have within the survey to be of that. I do know that we crafted some questions. Specifically, we're working with Public Works around relative priority of certain projects. And this is where Public Works gave me basically a list of six projects that were already on their docket. And they just wanted to know from the citizens, which priorities, what were the citizens' priorities, which projects were more important to citizens. And it'd be interesting. I haven't looked at the data set either. It'd be interesting to see how the survey tool translated that, Survey Monkey translated that. Literally, you can drag which project is more important than others. So it did somehow rank them 1 to 5, 1 to 6, and but that's one key actionable thing with respect to next year's budget, because that way Public Works can go back and say, look, X percentage of our survey responses really wanted this as their #1 project, and it would help feed the budget cycle.
There's one other thing that kind of comes to mind, and I'm not sure if this is part of the work that you would be doing, Marianne, or kind of a follow-up piece of work, but I assume that we would be taking this and going to the Board of Selectmen. So, I'm kind of envisioning 5 to 7 slides. There's one slide up front that's like, this many people responded, kind of here's an overview of, the different demographics of people that responded. Here's 3 or 4 insight slides on kind of key learnings. And then maybe there's a few at the end that really take the most powerful open responses. And it's just quotes from people of, really powerful statements that demonstrate some of the core insights. So, something like that, I would envision we would take that to the Board of Selectmen, send it out to all the departments that participated, almost as a kind of summary view of the outputs of the survey.
Right. So that's great to outline that as well. I should probably also introduce myself a little bit and my background.
Please, sorry, I didn't say that earlier.
No,
yeah, please do.
No worries. So my name is Marianne Bouvet. I'm a senior advisor over at CVS Health. I've been working with healthcare data for 10 to 12 years now. And so my current position is really in innovation and strategy, where we take, in our team, take end-to-end processes and optimize them across the enterprise. This is across all of our books of businesses, including our newest acquisition of Aetna. So with that, I think by looking at this data, I love small projects like this, and I also love the impact that it would have on the town. So Matt, I did take a look at the survey from that town, and yes, they did have an external consultant come in with hundreds of pages, and I was like, I don't think I can reproduce that within a couple months. However, I can do a smaller version of that and also put together a deck for you all to review prior to having that go to Board of Selectmen. And you can probably pick and choose which items you think are most impactful, and then we can create and collaborate on a story that would be great for the residents of Southborough, but also to be impactful for all the different departments and municipalities in town.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so we'll take, if you don't mind, I can do a couple of working sessions, or maybe present to you at the next town meeting. I think is this on a monthly basis?
These meetings, the MTC meetings, are on a monthly basis. So the next time we'll meet is in August. Okay. But between now and then, feel free to either Angela or myself. It's important that we don't have a quorum. We can feel free if you have questions and so forth. Sure. We can discuss. Also, I am cognizant that this is going to be a lot of effort, and there's a lot of data to sift through. So I think in our conversation, you had mentioned that there might be another person who might be willing to volunteer to assist. That would be your partner, Brian. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so he has a data science background, and just looking at the data, it would probably be helpful for me to to discuss through it, just to see, are we framing the questions correctly for the data to actually answer them? And thank you for offering to have the one-on-one conversations like with Matt and Angela, Larry as well, if you would like to join in on those conversations or have a separate conversation of what your thoughts are on how this data would turn out.
As Matt noted, we have to be a little bit careful that at most these are pairwise. Otherwise, there are open meeting law issues that we need to deal with. We can't have a quorum of people talking to you outside of the meeting.
Of course. Okay, sounds great. And so that's correct. My husband Brian would like to consult, if that's okay with you all.
Yeah, so Angela and Larry, what are your thoughts on Ryan at joining, basically working, we'd vote, and I would execute another consultant volunteer agreement with Brian to assist Marianne in this effort?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think it's always good to have another person to bounce those ideas off of and just get a validation. So appreciate his willingness to participate and volunteer as well. And I have no issues with that.
And it gives them something interesting to talk about over dinner. So.
Exactly.
Okay, so I propose that the Ways Committee authorize me to engage in a consultant volunteer agreement with Brian Bouvet. Is that how you pronounce it? Great. For the efforts of analysis of the town citizen survey.
Second.
Great. Let's go around to vote. Larry?
Aye.
Myself is aye as well, and Angela?
Aye.
Okay, great. So wonderful. So Marianne, I'll get, if you could supply me Brian's email address, you can send me an email. I can send him the volunteer agreement and we can proceed forward. So thank you.
Sounds great. Will do.
Okay. Is there anything else we should discuss or any additional questions you have immediately, Marianne? Either questions you have immediately or Angela, Larry, any guidance or key asks for us that we'd like to see out of this analysis?
Nothing more than what I've already stated right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was so broad that it's hard to sort of put my finger on one thing until we see some funneling of the data to focus onto.
I think one thing I've noticed, just taking a cursory look at this, is that the demographic that you see as respondents for this survey is different from the people who would attend town meetings. And so I just wanted to give that just a perspective as we are driving towards a more data-driven approach.
That's a very interesting insight.
Yeah.
Are you basically saying that the age distribution of ages of respondents is lower than those who attend town meeting?
I have not surveyed the age of those who have gone to town meeting, but I can observe that it is a younger population.
At town meeting, you think, or that filled out the survey?
That filled out the survey.
That filled out the survey. Okay. Yeah, it usually is an older demographic that goes to town meeting.
That's good. That's good. Ideally, my hope is that the survey respondents would be as representative as possible of citizens. And that, so this is actually one of the interesting questions. Maybe you're just about to bring it up, Angela, is can we glean based on census data, which Mr. Hegarty has access to, and we can possibly supply to you, how representative the survey respondents are of our actual citizens.
What was the final total on number of responses?
It was a couple hundred.
I think it's 430.
430.
Okay.
It's not bad for a survey.
Yeah, because at the last meeting it was 350 something,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
That's really
Take a look
pretty.
at that data again.
So yeah, I think that probably is one of the things to ask. So I think, would it be helpful for you to get access to census data?
That would be great if I could get a comparison of that.
So this would be a question to Mr. Hegarty. Let me allow you to talk here. What data can we provide to Marianne from census?
Well, we can, all residents above age 17, except for the very small subset that are protected for a bunch of reasons, really 20 people at a time. But we need that data annually for records. We can do that. I could also identify for you everyone that has attended town meeting. They actually know the identity of all the people because we check in by voter, voter ID, it matches on that. So we can go backwards as far as you like.
Okay.
You need the name, the address, the date of birth, mailing address, street address, head of household information, if that would be value to you. Or we can do it, we cannot do it by gender. We can't do it by gender.
Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe after this meeting, or not tonight, but later this week, I'll touch base with you, Jim, and we'll work out the logistics of getting access to whatever data we can get access to provide to Marianne. So, and yeah, from what I've seen, my projects I've worked on, the data is truly valuable, not in and of itself, like survey data is not itself, but it's when you combine with other interesting data sets, right? Provide very interesting, meaningful insights. So that would be helpful.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from your side, Marianne?
None at this time.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you for your willingness
Thank
to serve
you very
in this
much.
capacity. This is exciting. This is the first time we're doing it as a town, and it's going to be exciting to start this off and show some meaningful results and transform Southborough into something a data-driven town. So thanks again.
Definitely.
Just out of
Thank you, Marianne.
curiosity, what do you view as the time frame for the analysis? Is it 2 months, 3 months, 4 months for you to, I mean, I'm just going out in time, but for you to get to the point where you feel like you've squeezed all of the interesting information out and are ready to move on?
I'm hoping for a month time in terms of like just having preliminary results, presenting to you some of that data for your first feedback, having, subject matter experts and stakeholders are really important to just see the data. And then this might arise more questions or a second follow-up of analyses, which then we can then tune the story to then present to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, great, thank you.
That'd be wonderful.
So speaking of which, normally at the end we wait till the end of our MTC meeting to talk about scheduling the follow-up meeting. But because I think this is going to be integral for our next discussion at MTC meeting in August, perhaps we could look at our calendars now, Angela, Larry, and Marianne, see what our schedule's like in August. And would love to do it at a time that Marianne is available to join us. So
I'm away the week of the 23rd, Matt, but other than that, I should be around in August.
how's the week of the August 17th? So or August 16th, which is something like the 17th or the 19th. I work with anybody.
I would prefer the 19th.
19th works for me.
Marianne, does August 19th work for you?
The 19th sounds good.
Great. And I know that we now have the flexibility of either meeting in person or remote via Zoom. Do we have a preference of meeting in person
I
or remote?
thought we discussed at the last meeting that we would try to alternate.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Would you be able, if we did meet in person, if we did start alternating back and forth, Marianne, would you be able to join us? Or would it be better for you if we did remote?
I think I can join in person. I guess an area that I might think of is like where would we be meeting? And
One of the town buildings, like the fire
Okay.
department, the public safety, or the town hall.
okay. And is there internet access? I just
Absolutely. Public,
okay.
yeah.
Yep.
Just
Yes, internet.
checking.
Yeah, good questions. Yeah.
Yeah, the MTC is not allowed to meet anywhere where there's not internet access. So.
I could say that I will never schedule, as the chair, I will never schedule a meeting where there's not internet access. So we're not going to schedule a meeting there.
Great. Then I'll have handouts and also be able to present those slides then.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's target the 19th and maybe we'll target public safety because it's easy to reserve online. So, okay. If there's nothing else, thanks again, Marianne, and we look forward to collaborating with you and discussing with you in our next meeting.
Sounds great. Thank
Very
you.
much. Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
You too. See ya. Bye. All right. Let's go on our agenda. Given that Jason is not here, lots of the regular town IT discussion can't happen. Do we happen to know the status of the ex officio member from the school committee? I'd heard that they had found somebody who's a candidate. I can't remember whether they had actually been appointed or not.
I thought that Tim said that they had. I thought he
Okay.
sent an email saying that he had spoken to them and they had finally appointed someone.
Okay. I unfortunately was neglectful in keeping up with my emails, and so I did not extend the invite to that person for this evening. So that's why that person probably has not joined us tonight.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get this into notes. So the ex officio member from the school committee has been selected?
Let me I need to double check. I want to make sure I'm not stating anything inaccurately.
Maurice Myrie, I think is the name.
Can you spell that for me?
Or Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E, and last name is M-Y-R-I-E.
Did you find the email, Matt? It sounds like.
I sent an email where Jason was asking whether I communicated with this person or not. I have not. And I sent an email a couple of months ago. I saw an email from Mr. Litt saying that superintendent would be proposing, and when they met in June, but I'd never heard confirmation that he would actually be confirmed in an email. Maybe we could look up on no, we'd have to look up the minutes of the meeting. If they've been, yeah, and I think the school committee maybe only met in June. I don't know whether they've actually posted their minutes from that or not. So I think we'll have to follow up whether he's been appointed or not. My understanding is it sounds like he likely has been, but we need to get confirmation.
I'm finding it real easily, so maybe we can verify.
Okay. Anything on the strategic tech plan?
I mean, we're really just waiting for the results of the survey to serve as a litmus test of, whether the pillars that we've outlined and all of that are in alignment with what we're hearing from the survey. So I anticipate doing another revision once we have the survey results.
Perfect. That's great. All right, let's flip back to our discussion to rules of procedure and the project questionnaire. Thanks again, Larry, for putting this together. Let me pull up the project questionnaire and share that.
Yeah, so the rules of procedure, like I said, my primary goal was just to sort of run them by everybody before I sent them to the town clerk for filing, which I'll fix that footer and I'll do that this week.
Yeah, I think it looks good. I don't think we need a new vote on it because we already voted from.
There's really nothing to vote on. We've voted on the only thing that I believe changed. In fact, we voted on it twice. So I think we're all set there.
Why not a third time, right? It's more important. More times we vote, the more impact we have, right? All right, great. So let's pull up the project. Let me share my screen on the project questionnaire.
Yeah, this is going back probably a half a dozen meetings at least, but I had suggested that in order to get some consistency in terms of how we evaluate various projects that various departments are undertaking, we tend to have people come to our meetings and talk about them, but we don't have any consistent way of collecting information. And I suggested that we might want to create a structure for collecting that information. And I volunteered to take a stab at that. And that's where this comes from.
Okay, so up till now, I have been actually based on Angela's document. Angela created a tabular format, sort of a template as part of the interview that she originally did. I think it was with Youth and Family Services. And then all subsequent interviews, I've been using that same template, and I've created docs using that same template. Like I say, it's basically just filling in a table of the key business processes and key capabilities of each of the departments, and for each of those, identifying what the current technology that's being used, and almost similar to the, is this a new capability? Is this existing upgrade? And what are the opportunities for future requirements / opportunities for usage of technology? So I'm wondering if, obviously, this is your structure. Is this structure here is definitely very comprehensive, and related to that. So I've been thinking about, Angela, turning your doc into an Excel doc instead of Word. If we should shift to Excel or spreadsheet, and possibly use. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, finish up, and then I'll try.
Yeah, basically, possibly use Larry's to help us refine the columns and add columns, or refine the structure or process. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me just make a note, Angela. I don't want to cut you off, but I don't view these as being in conflict with each other. I mean, the document that you're using strikes me as being sort of department focused or broadly department focused in terms of processes, procedures, things like that. Whereas this was more project focused. The Council on Aging is going to engage a new cloud service to keep track of their members. That's a nice line item in the kind of document that you are using, but in terms of now delving into that project and saying, what kind of data is going to be stored, what are the backup strategies, what are the security strategies, what are the costs, what are the ongoing costs, what are the maintenance costs. Those are not the kinds of things, at least that I've seen to date, covered in the document you've been working on. Now, if the interest is somehow combining the two, I'm fine with that, but I think there's a different cut here.
You said exactly what I was going to say, Larry. I mean, I think the initial template focuses on, you know, what is the department, what's their vision, what's their scope of services, you know, what are they responsible for? And this kind of takes it down another level, which is, you know, the implementation of that scope is driven by projects that they are creating. You know, we should probably look at both and see if there is any overlap, but I think they complement each other. And you could almost envision a workbook where the beginning tab is that department overview, and then you've got tabs that are project specific as more of the work is going on.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I mean, it's almost basically a pipeline where the first tab is like it's almost the initial discovery, opportunity, investigation, or identification, or the opportunities. And then of those various opportunities, once it's been identified, what are the most impactful opportunities, perhaps the more low-hanging fruit, etc. Then moving forward into the next tab, which is the actual, okay, we've identified this opportunity, we want to attack it. What are all the characteristics of the project requirements to attack this particular line item? Because clearly, with limited volunteer resources and limited budget and personnel, we're going to need to prioritize, and filling out all these things is going to be only for those specific line items that we actually want to attack and focus on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I view this as something that happens when somebody's actually about to go spend money on something. In other words, the Board of Health is actually finally going to create an account on mysepticsystem.com, and we'd like to understand what the impact of that is on town technology in general.
We have another document that I think was on my to-do list, which I've started, and it's still in draft, so it hasn't been shared yet, but it's more around the vendor questionnaires. So if we're in a vendor selection process, what are the core questions that we want to ask to assess the vendors? I wonder if, I think that's the other question, is that part of this, or is that also its own standalone document? So once I have that in draft form, maybe we can take a look at that as well and make a decision on whether we should integrate that into this or just leave it on its own.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, traditionally vendors are, in vendor management is somewhat independent, but it is connected to your project. Obviously, you need to found the reason why we engage vendors is for particular projects.
Even if it's just a call out, maybe at some point in here, have you performed a vendor assessment, and then link to that document or something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I think I would love to see. Would it make sense to put together a living document per department, a living spreadsheet per department that has these two tabs? The first tab being an Excel version of the Word doc, the Word table format that you created, Angela, that we just maintain, and then the second tab is the ongoing projects. Basically this doc, these questions here, and I can see it being, basically one column per question, etc., with with the ability of selecting from different options.
This is a little bit of a side note, but I thought Jason set up a Teams site for us, but I wasn't able to get into it. I mean, it would be wonderful to have one central location where we could all post our documents that are like, works in progress and have access to them. But I don't know if we have that yet or not.
Yeah, I don't know if we have. Good question. We can reach out to Jason. I think on a related note, from my understanding, I know that Tom was Tom actively avoided creating teams for any boards or committees just because the potential for violating open meeting law, meaning if there's active collaboration on a document, basically that's not any different than active, like, sending a file
even
back
if
and
it's
forth.
virtual, even if it's
Even
virtual, you
virtual,
can't
yeah.
do online collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. For example, I had thought, this is that was sort of one of the first things when I first joined the MTC. I thought, hey, we're going to do this right. We're going to set up, Google Docs, collaborative editing. We're set up Slack. We're going to start, doing what like real companies do, which is like real-time collaboration and continuous refinement. And then to find out that we could only really talk to each other once a month, slow things out. So we sort of need to do our best in
Oh, so that invite that I got to Teams a while ago for MTC, I should continue to ignore that.
Well,
Did you
that's what
get
I
one?
got, Larry. Were you able to even get in? I couldn't
No,
get in.
I have this thing that I consider myself pretty sophisticated in this stuff. And I find Teams, I use Teams pretty extensively in my day job, and I hate it, and I find it inscrutable. I never seem to get to do what I want. And although I've been told by several people in the know that I can actually use Teams with multiple organizations, I've been afraid that and I've been invited by one other organization, which I haven't done yet either. I've been afraid that if I clicked on that link, it would screw up Teams and I'd never be able to get back to my real job. And therefore, I just ignore the invites. I hadn't even thought about the fact that we're not allowed to collaborate anyway. So I was just ignoring it for my own reasons. But I
don't really see how it's different from doing it in a team site versus the way it happens now, where we're emailing the documents around and giving each other feedback on them. I mean, at a certain point, we got to be able to function.
Yeah, but I don't think we can. There can't be back and forth. I think, from my understanding of open meeting law, there can't be active back and forth. Here's an idea, send it back to me, etc. So I think sending out documents in advance of a meeting to prepare what's going to be discussed and openly in the meeting, that's perfectly fine. I've always viewed, for example, I've maintained like Google Doc file share for our agendas, and I think I've granted Larry editor access to that as well. So, but everybody else are like read-only access. So it's perfect fine if everybody has a read-only, but it can't actually be active collaboration on that. I would love to be wrong on this. Maybe it's now that we still have Mr. Hegarty joining us. So what are your thoughts, Jim, about or understanding of collaboration outside of meetings on documents? From my understanding, that does violate, if there's any active collaboration or collaborative editing of documents, that does violate open meeting law. Is that correct, Jim?
Thanks. The key issue becomes that you cannot have the term that the Attorney General uses, deliberation, which is really communication, amongst a quorum of the committee on a topic. So your quorum is 3.
3, yeah.
So any 2 of you can communicate. Matt, you could communicate directly with Larry, and then you could communicate directly with Angela, as long as you don't share with one of them the thoughts. Now, conversely, they could all push their thoughts to one person, designate one person as the collector, so to speak, and then they can bring that forward at your next meeting. Now, understand that requirement only applies to the board. It does not apply to, say, Montiel, because he is not well checked that he'll be an ex officio member of the board, I think, as of tonight or whatever they want it. But for the committees that have help, assistance, like the Conservation Commission, or a board that has somebody on the staff that can work with them, they can collect and put all that stuff together. The best advice I've ever heard from anyone on this, the simplest advice from a lady who's head of the largest municipal law firm in the state, Lauren Goldberg, who's a terrific teacher on this. He said the simple rule of thumb is don't share your belief or opinion on a topic in an email. I know that flies in the face of how you guys lead your day lives, but that's the world we live in over here.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah,
Jim, did you catch that last part?
Don't share your belief or opinion outside of meetings. That's, yeah.
So is it accurate if I think I heard what Jim said, if Larry posts a document in a team site, I could give my feedback to Larry. So I could go in and I could comment on the document and I could add all of my comments. Matt could then go into the same document and he could add all of his comments. Larry would then be responsible for bringing that back if he was the document owner to the next public meeting, and he would summarize the feedback that he received so that it was public and transparent. But essentially we could share feedback on documents in that manner. Is that an accurate interpretation of what he said?
Let me ask you one clarifying point. When you would post your responses to Larry, would anybody else be able to see your posts to Larry?
No, if it was a closed board team site, then they would not.
Well, that's not
Nobody
true.
else on the board. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Angela, if Angela sent her comments to Larry, I sent my comments to Larry and could not see Angela's. It sounds like that's the
Right.
dividing line.
You can't both mark up the same document.
Oh,
Exactly.
so I couldn't see Matt's comments to you and he
Right,
couldn't see
because
mine
that
to you.
effectively creates a three-way communication.
I got it. Okay. I don't know how you even do that in Teams, because I do think it would be visible if we were just all
Pretty sure
editing
it'd
the
be
same
visible.
document.
The only way
You
is
would have to
to,
make your own copy.
Yeah. You'd have to make your own copy. Yeah.
Microsoft Word has the ability of merging multiple documents.
Let me give you an example of the extremeness of this policy, which I don't personally agree with, but I'm a voice of the wilderness here. There was an instance, I believe, in the town of Concord, where multiple members of a committee posted on a blog on the same topic. And they were found to have violated the open meeting law because they engaged in a communication outside of the posted meeting. I think that's absurd because it was in view of the public and the rest of it, but there you go.
Were they posting as board members or were they posting as private citizens, or does it matter?
They were posting on a topic that the board had jurisdiction over.
Okay. Right.
It's a crazy world.
Yeah. So what triggers it is whether if the topic is relevant to the committee or not. Whether there's no way to pull off our hats, even if in a completely independent public forum. Yeah. So.
But say the Southborough blog had a posting on bus routes, and I, as a citizen, posted a comment about the bus routes, and then Larry did, and then you did. That bus routes isn't something that the MTC has any jurisdiction over, so that doesn't violate anything.
As long as the topic wasn't
technology
bus
of bus routes
tracking software.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think I got it.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. So, yeah, this comes back to then the Microsoft Teams. We just have to. I think we'll just have to explore. I'm new to Teams, like what level of granular permissions it has, and I mean, maybe there's some magical feature that allows various people to comment and not see other people's comments. That would be cool. But
well, I think you can actually create closed teams, where, so in theory, and this only works because the committee is small, so the combinatorics don't get out of hand, but you could create teams. Teams is a thing inside of Teams. You could create teams that had, the group pairwise, a team with Matt and Larry, and a team with Matt and Angela, and a team with Larry and Angela, and there'd be like I don't know how many people we're talking about. Are we talking about, if there are 5 members, we're talking about a bunch of teams. That way we could collaborate pairwise without having to send emails back and forth. So we could have threads, but I believe you can make them closed so that nobody else could enter that team and read it. That's not great because that's only a minor step forward from email, in my opinion.
Right.
The major step forward is when you can have multiple people in a room commenting on things, which clearly won't work. So whether that's worth the effort or not, I just don't know.
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. And with all of this, even if we could create those pairs, we have to avoid it's more manual control or procedural control. We need to avoid chaining. So if I receive a comment from Angela on a doc, I can't relay that comment to.
Yeah, but that problem exists in email also.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one isn't new.
Yeah.
Could we talk about Iron Mountain before we lose Jim? I don't know if we have Jim for the whole meeting, but I'd just like to get some feedback on whether I should proceed with setting up that meeting.
Yeah, let's talk about Iron Mountain. That's a good point.
It sounded like there was some level of interest. But again, I think, now as I, think about it further, are we then also in danger of violating an open meeting law unless we have the person come on to like one of the monthly MTC sessions? I mean, if we're just doing something that is a learning for us to educate ourselves on a particular topic, but multiple committee members are in that session, it still sounds like that could potentially be a violation. With that, how would we do that?
Go ahead, Jim.
If you had a meeting with a quorum of the board to meet with Iron Mountain to talk about the products they have and how they could come into Southborough, you'd have to do that in a public setting.
You have to do it in a public setting. Okay.
Be my advice on that.
So there's no mechanism for any committee or board in town to actually take a training class.
Well, yes, there are. Yes, they can. And I'll give you an example of that, or let me phrase it in a different way. There are several instances where boards and committees can attend a public meeting, or to attend, say, the Board of Selectmen's meeting. The point of that becomes that they cannot enter into a deliberation on a topic before the board or committee while a quorum is present. So if the entire planning board wanted to attend a selectmen's meeting, they could, but they can't talk about anything before the planning board unless they posted that as a meeting. Conversely, there's been an informational meeting about the Trails Committee held, I believe, at the senior center. It was open to the public and everybody, and that did not require a meeting. The new town council is coming in here next week. If you'd like, I'll be happy to run this by him and see under what circumstances. He may have a very different perspective on this than prior town council. See if it's less restrictive.
What if the town were, I mean, and I'm not trying to catch you in anything here, seriously. I'm just trying to understand where the limits are. What if let me contrive a situation. What if there were a new budgeting software being brought into the town and the members of the Board of Selectmen each needed to interact with that software? So the software vendor was going to hold a class on how to interact with that software. Could that class only be held during a formal meeting of the Board of Selectmen, or is there another approach for them to actually have a training class like that?
No, because it would be a training, it would not be considered a public meeting. That has popped up previously. For example, I'll give you an example. We have had sessions where I've had the Attorney General's office and the ethics folks from the Ethics Commission and the Secretary of State's office come out to provide training to the public on open meeting law, ethics, and public records law. And in one case, the Board of Selectmen were ordered by the Attorney General to attend. And they attended the public session, and they did not post a meeting, but they asked questions about the law and so forth.
So it sounds like if we structured the agenda not as a discussion about Southborough, but as Iron Mountain doing an informational session about how towns are dealing with essentially data preservation, keeping the authentication of data, then that would fall more into the training realm, and we could do that. But what we couldn't do is have like a detailed conversation about some of our challenges in Southborough and how, they've seen other towns and governments deal with those. If it was an interactive discussion, that would then need to be done in an actual MTC forum.
I tend to agree with you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot an email tonight to the Attorney General's office with a hypothetical and see if I can get a
Okay, that'd be
response
great.
on how to phrase that.
Okay.
And frankly, sometimes it depends who answers your email on whether you get what kind of response we get back. But I'll send an email in tonight as to how we could structure let's call this a vendor presentation on their capability. And I think that's a fair description, and I can't see why that wouldn't necessarily fall under a public, a training thing versus a discussion of So let me run that up a flagpole, and I'll hopefully respond to them within a day or two and get back.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank you.
so much. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, so yeah, just want to briefly give an overview of Iron Mountain. What are their services that they provide, Angela or Larry?
They specialize in backup and data storage, everything from, taking sand data off site. It used to be tape and then it became online, and, they do stuff very specialized in National Archives type of services. That's been my personal experience with them. Larry, I don't know if you've also.
They go back a long way.
They
used to buy old missile silos and use them. But in 1995, I was running an R&D facility here in Westboro, and we had Iron Mountain come in once a week and pick up a stack of backup tapes to take them off site to store them. So they've been doing that kind of thing for a long time. They've been actively getting into data center types of activities. And I don't know anything about that other than, since I'm an investor, I do try to read up on them a little bit. And that's been their primary activity, has been recently to become more of a competitor in the data center, Equinix and all those kinds of things, to compete with people like that. But their primary mission has always been storage and protection.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to find out, how they compare to modern cloud services for data durability, et cetera. Because I know that this cuts right to the heart of what Amazon and other cloud services about, distributed replication and X number of copies, N+1 copies, with erasure coding, et cetera.
My understanding of the discussion we had last week was that in this case, the issue was not protection and security. I mean,
correct.
You're right. I mean, there are lots of people, whether it's Amazon or Oracle or Microsoft, or name your favorite 6 of them. All of them can provide storage as a service with as many 9s as you want. Seriously, it just depends on how many dollars you're willing to pay per gigabyte or terabyte. The issue here was more of
turning paper into digital assets.
Right, and identification and encryption, and well, not even encryption, but what's the word? Authentication, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Being able to authenticate a digital version of a document as being the actual digital version of a document. You know, wherever we start, I mean, you know, putting it on S3 is not the problem. It's putting something on S3 that we can then pull off of S3 and say, yes, this is an exact duplicate of the document we put there 15 years ago as the minutes of the 1943 town meeting. And that's a very different problem in my eyes. And I'm not an expert in that, but
Yeah, completely agreed. So this is more of a legal question. And I'd love to engage both new town council as well as find out from Iron Mountain what their experience is in, you know, digital signatures. And what really matters is, yeah, it's from a legal standpoint, can we dispose of the original copies of these documents once they've been digitized? Do we have a mechanism in place that will be respected by
silo?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be respected by a court. Yes, Jim. You want to speak?
So to piggyback on Larry's comments, I'm working on a scenario right now where I'm trying to research a change in the zoning code to try to find what year it was enacted. And you'd think that would be an easy task. It is not. And I have scanned town meetings going back multiple decades, close to 100 years. And I've combined them into decades to stretch one document at a time. And as I've been reviewing these, frankly, before the meeting began, I have seen documents that I know are incorrect. For example, Paul Berry, you know, my predecessor here. And I've seen some of his names where when they scanned it, the density of the scan was such that it gave it as a J, not a P. And it makes me question numbers and votes on other things as well. It just didn't come out the same. So I question the validity of some of these scanned documents. I'm going to have to go and pull records from 40, 50 years ago and, you know, do it the old fashioned way because I just don't trust what I have here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to me, and that's a really interesting point, that whatever mechanism we choose, if the goal is to either eliminate the paper or make the paper relatively inaccessible. I mean, you know, if we put it in a missile silo, we could in theory get it back, but it's hard. We should always ensure that we not only have an OCR version of the document, which is really important because as Jim was saying, one of the great benefits here is searching, but that we also have a pure scanned, high quality scanned version of the document. So if there is any question about the content, we can go back and say, you know, was this a 6 or a 0 at some point in time?
Well, also disaster recovery. I mean, these huge amounts of paper that are sitting in basements and stuff. I mean, it just feels like we're just asking for a fire, a flood, you know, something. And then all of a sudden everything's gone. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
at least with a digital copy, you've got something that can be retained if the physical asset is lost.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a few discussions with Jim over the past month and I owe him the link to this, but let me share my screen here. But yeah, purely, again, this is not for any sort of accessibility or allowing for public access, purely from a scanning and access and OCR standpoint. There's some software out there that allows basically direct from scanner to S3 in bulk, and supports, you know, barcodes. So you can print, you know, basically put a stack of pages with a particular subject, print these, and put a printed off barcode in front of it. And we'll do these automatically in batches and categorize them into the respective folders. And it's relatively, you know, simple, and have, of course, you know, decent OCR built in, etc.
Let me posit though that the problem is a little bit more complicated than that, and you know, it wasn't until Jim said a few minutes ago that I realized, although we've probably talked about it, that how important it is to be able to search for things. And I've had to, in one situation, I have had to actually search through the town meeting notes from like 1860 and 1861. And not only was it hard to find what I wanted, but the handwriting really wasn't all that great. Scanning and OCRing a bunch of stuff and storing it directly into S3 solves a couple of interesting problems. But one of the things that needs to be part of that process needs to be some mechanism for doing things like creating a concordance so that we can search easily. Putting 15 terabytes of files on S3 that we've OCR'd doesn't say that I can, type search for this word. There's no easy way to do that right now. And one of the things that needs to happen, and I'm sure there are solutions for this also, is that as files are OCR'd and added into S3, somebody needs to run a concordance on those files and add them to a database so that when we want to search for, let's say, County Road, which is what I had to search for in 1861, I don't have to search through 15 terabytes of scanned documents. I can have a concordance that will find those words and tell me, which documents to start with. Otherwise, the problem, especially since they're not on my disk, but they're in S3, so just searching them, even if I could search the files, that's a tough thing to do if they're not on your own system. So, I think the problem is actually slightly more complicated than even OCRing them and authenticating them.
Absolutely, completely agree. I think all these I consider sort of enhancements to be able to get to all of the features we want, including being able to full search. You need to have a scan. You need to have an OCR, and you build the OCR off of the original scan. So once we have the documents in place in S3 buckets, both the scanned version and the OCR metafiles, then feeding those to an engine. There's multiple engines out there that can go through and things people have built to search and so forth. But you need to have a foundation of having the things scanned and OCR available. So little by little, let's start with the basic, and then allow for scanning and searching, etc. Yeah, I don't think we need to have all of it at once. Yeah. Okay. So sounds good. Any other discussion on this topic?
Well, I mean, getting back to that, the discussion, it seems to me that once we determine whether we're actually going to get an opinion from the Attorney General's office, which we might not, I suppose, if the opinion is that we could schedule a session, as long as we follow the following guidelines, I believe we should do that. And if we can't, then, do we schedule a meeting and try to do it at a time that would be convenient for whatever vendors we're talking to, and make it part of the.
Well, we can think. Let's maybe discuss that at our next meeting. Let's find out the results, and we have two options. We either schedule a time, we have a public meeting, we invite Iron Mountain to one of our meetings, basically, or we decide to go without quorum and let's have a couple people who are interested in this particular topic, Iron Mountain, and basically two of us talk to them and then report back.
Yeah, that works too, definitely.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So I think that's good. Any other discussion on that scanning or Iron Mountain for the town clerk's office? I think that's the key follow-ups from our last month's discussion. All right. I don't think we have follow-ups from our other discussions about the historical committee or council on aging or board of health, I'm guessing.
I did go see the Board of Health and spent some time with them in person. I can't remember if I talked about it last meeting or not. But they're doing well. Jason has been great with them. You know, they've been very appreciative of his efforts. He's already moved forward on a number of the open issues that they had, and the one additional one that they were waiting for was already in progress. They were just, you know, they were just waiting for, I think, a technician to come on site. So I do know that he has addressed a lot of the open issues that they had.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Any other items for tonight's?
I just had one question, a minor issue. I'm just making some notes here. Back when we met with the Historical Society person, Michael W. Can't remember. He just ran for something too. In any case, there was the whole issue of the fiber terminating in the basement of the Historical Society Museum.
Yeah.
Did that ever go anywhere?
I haven't heard anything. If you have some time to reach out to him, you're back in town, it'd be great to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be worth. I mean, I have to work with Jason also because, you know, fiber has two sides. So I'd have to look at the fiber on this side and then look at the fiber on that side and see if they're in any way marked in such a way that I could identify both sides without putting a TDR on them or something. But it seems like it's at least worth taking a look at. So
yeah, absolutely. If you wouldn't mind,
I'll try to do that before the next meeting.
Awesome. Thanks.
The other big topic, Matt, was the position. And I don't know where we landed on that.
Yeah. From my understanding, yeah, it's the position was potentially downgraded. I understand it's still in discussion, and I think there may be a meeting tomorrow night or something like that to discuss the latest proposal.
Have you talked to the woman on the personnel board or
I've not yet.
advisory or any of them?
I've not yet.
I don't know what our next steps are on that, but it definitely sounded like in the last iteration, it was going in a different direction than I thought we had all agreed to.
Yeah, I need to do that very quickly, so I'll commit to doing that tomorrow, hopefully.
Even the title, we had agreed on senior technology specialist, and it was the senior part got dropped, so it was just technology specialist.
Really?
So, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of miscommunications and misalignment on this.
Any idea? I apologize for not knowing the whole discussion. Who's driving this? Who's driving that? Like dropping, the name senior.
I don't know. I don't know if it was a decision or if just like the notes like omitted it for some reason, but yet it was officially in there.
All right. Let me ask around.
Okay.
Find out where is this coming from. But yeah, thanks for the reminder. Good point. All right. Anything else for tonight? If not, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right. I vote Larry.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
And likewise, aye. Thank you all, and looking forward to our next meeting, which is we said it on the 19th of August, and I'll reserve a room in person, and looking forward to that discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
If I could just throw something out
Have
there
a good
real quick.
night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Angel, I just sent the email out for the AG's office. That's good to go.
Great.
Matt, I think you've seen the basement here at the townhouse. Has everybody else seen it?
The basement of the townhouse.
Oh, basement of
Um,
townhouse.
Yeah,
Okay.
if anybody wants to, it's particularly good around Halloween time. We scare you of how many boxes we have down there. So Larry or Angela, if you haven't seen the basement of a townhouse, Jim would be happy to take you on a
Now, I want to buy
scare
Jim a
tour.
coffee and hear FBI stories. That's on my agenda.
When I go over look to the other side of that fiber, maybe I'll avail myself of that opportunity. Great. Well,